one and all, to the Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast. I am the devilishly handsome outlaw himself, your King of Extreme, and we are here to break down the 10 greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champions of all time. Folks, we're going to do it. We're going to do it right here. Yes, folks, I, your King of Extreme, am going to break down the top 10 greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champions of all time. I figure, as a champion, the greatest champion in Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast history, it would be my duty, my destiny, my service to you to break down the top 10 World Heavyweight Champions in all WWE, WWF, WWWF history. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So, number 10, who starts off the list as the 10th greatest world champion in all history? Time to play the game! Yes. Triple H is the 10th greatest world heavyweight champion in all WWE history. He was basically the final boss. If you were able to get through him, you actually were going to be springboarded into something great. Triple H was also that reliable hand in unsure times when the future was uncertain and outcomes were frail. You could put that strap on Triple H and you could count on him to actually draw a crowd or to, even more importantly, build a new star. So, the 10th greatest champion of all time, we raise our glass, Triple H, to you. Now, we move on to the 9th greatest World Heavyweight Champion. Who could that be other than the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels? Yes, another just amazing champion who helped propel the WWE from the new generation, and he was the bridge from the new generation to the Attitude Era. And he was truly one of the great champions throughout all wrestling history, and that's why we are honoring him at number 9. I mean, let's be frank, his Iron Man match against Bret Hart, to a lot of WWE fans, the hour-long match concept was kind of new to them. Now, to me, I had kind of seen a few of them before, but I had never seen one like this. And it was just so beautiful. And at that point, I was hooked, and Shawn Michaels had my attention from then on. Like, it was a friend of mine in school who had a bunch of WrestleMania tapes, and he had the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels Iron Man match. And boy, howdy, we watched that, and for an hour, we were on the edge of our seats. And then when it went into sudden overtime, my God. And also, I'm going to say Shawn Michaels also took the best chair shot in wrestling history against The Undertaker in Hell in a Cell, which was also for the championship. So, what do you know? I'm bringing this all around. So, number 9, the greatest champion of all time. We give that to the HBK, Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid. To you, sir. Now, we move on to number 8, the 8th greatest champion in all the world, John Cena. Yes, John Cena was always reliable. Another guy that really had to carry the whole company on his back. Yes, he had to carry the whole damn thing right there, and he's gonna go down as one of the greatest of all time. You can say he's controversial, you can be one of those folks that says Cena sucks. I don't know why. he's one of those few guys that could have a good match with a wet paper bag or a broom handle. So he's got to go on this list because he was one of the few people that, people say, haha, Cena wins, LOL. It was the meme because he won a lot. Well, guess what? When you're on top and you're carrying the company on your back, if you drop an L to somebody that ain't worth it, that brings you down, and that brings the whole company down. So John, yes, he took care of himself, but he also could just put out amazing matches with some of the best in the world. And so that's why we give this spot of number 8 to the one and only John Cena, the man who cannot be seen. In fact, we've got John Cena here in studio right here to accept this award. John, amazing John Cena there, folks, the man who cannot be seen, here to accept the award as number 8. So to you, oh Doctor of Thugonomics, yes, thank you. So we move on to the 7th greatest champion in WWE history. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the 7th greatest champion of all time is Brock Lesnar. Yes, folks. Yes, you knew it had to be Brock. Of course he had to make the list. He's one of the few people left in wrestling with that old school mystique. He was also, in my opinion, the greatest undisputed champion ever. So to me, that still means something. I'll never forget, I actually got to see Brock Lesnar live defend the undisputed championship against The Undertaker in a house show in Lincoln, Nebraska at Pershing Auditorium. It was spectacular, and Brock ended up winning the match by a disqualification by Taker just waffling him in the head with a chair. I was like, oh, this was back in the olden days when the idea of not taking a shot to the head with a chair was, well, I'm like, what, you're going to take one on the back? You're going to put your hand up? Sheesh. So yeah, we know a whole lot more now, but yeah, that was quite the time. Those were quite the days. But yes, Brock Lesnar still to this day. I also saw him at the Royal Rumble in 2020 when he was WWE champion, just holding his belt over his head. It was stupendous. It was spectacular. One of the greatest live matches I've ever seen was watching the Royal Rumble live in 2020. And it's with a heavy heart that I have to say that was the last Royal Rumble that will ever be agented by Pat Patterson, and I got to see it. But yes, spectacular work. The Beast Incarnate, Suplex City. He's one of the last people that you can actually, you actually believe Brock. You believe, well, okay, that guy could go into business for himself at any minute and just kick the shit out of anybody in that ring, and you believe it. So that's why number 7 is going to Brock Lesnar, the Beast Incarnate and the 7th greatest WWE champion of all time. I'm sure at his gigantic hunting ranch that he's got up in Canada, the minute he hears, oh, what? I only made number 7? I'm sure he'll be heartbroken. But we move on. There's a few folks that anybody would have to admit you got to put a few spots higher, but Brock has to be on that list. So we move on to number 6, one that really holds a place near and dear to any wrestling fan's heart. Bret the Hitman Hart, obviously. He was the excellence of execution, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. And that might actually turn out to be true, unfortunately, because nobody's really able to work his style anymore. So Bret Hart was that great stalwart babyface champion that you could just count on to draw tickets, count on to get butts and seats, count on to make a good match, count on to actually be there and not be all fucked up when the show starts. Bret was, just in one word, consistent. Just beautifully, marvelously consistent. You could always count on Bret the Hitman Hart. So that is why he occupies number 6. And also, to me personally, it should have been for the title, but at WrestleMania 13, him versus Austin, that was just amazing stuff. But yeah, Bret, you could always count on him to just do amazing stuff with pretty much any opponent. He could even get good matches out of like Yokozuna. Who can forget his WrestleMania 9 main event against Yokozuna, where we found out who is the best wrestler between Bret Hart and Yokozuna? Well, clearly Hulk Hogan. So yeah, so he even put up with backstage politicking, and he still, even if he clearly didn't think it was a good idea, he would still go out and do his damnedest to make it the best he possibly could. And so that's why Bret the Hitman Hart occupies spot number 6 in the top 10 greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champions of all time. Now, we move on to the top 5. This is where things start getting really, really competitive. So, I was trying to think who would be appropriate for number 5 out of all the champions. Who would be one that could really exemplify being the champion? When you're the champion, you're the cream of the crop. Oh, and I forgot to toast to Bret. You are the cream of the crop when you are number 5 in the greatest WWE World Champions. And that would have to be the Macho Man Randy Savage. Yes, the Macho Man Randy Savage, Randall Savage himself, is number 5. Who else could it possibly be? You knew he had to make it onto this list at some beautiful point. The Macho Man, one of the greatest champions, and really the only person you could count on when you didn't have Hogan. Hogan was, everybody kind of knew what that was, but Macho Man also just has that pop culture following, and always has, pretty much from, I would say at least like 92, 93 on. Macho Man has been not only a professional wrestler, but just a piece of pop culture. You can even download a Macho Man Randy Savage mod for Skyrim, where you turn all of the dragons into Macho Man Randy Savage, and right before they blow fire, the dragon goes, "Ooh yeah!" Like, yeah, the man permeated deeper into pop culture than most people probably ever will. So that's one thing that, and also as an aside, like, anytime that man would put his fingers to the sky and he was signaling that he was about to fly, I was on the edge of my seat, because you knew you were going to see something spectacular. And he was somebody that just knew how to hold the crowd, hold them in his hand, and just get that reaction perfect. And I don't know how he did that, considering just how regimented he was with his matches. Ricky Steamboat was kind of a guy that, I'll do it on the night. Savage in his Intercontinental title, like, everything was bullet point as to what they're going to do. But he was one of those few people that just had such a unique relationship with the fans that even despite all of the Hulk Hogan's politicking, Mach still was able to come out as champion several times in an era where some amazing greats like Roddy Piper never touched the gold. but Macho Man did. And that is why he is number 5. To you, Macho Man Randy Savage. But now, folks, we move onward and we move upward to number 4. Who is the 4th greatest world heavyweight champion of all time? That would have to be none other than Bruno San Martino. Yes, the undoubted longest reign in WWE, WWF, WWWF championship history that has ever been and undoubtedly ever will be, goes to Bruno San Martino, that first stalwart babyface champion that you could just always count on. The crowds love, and this happened to a lot of great champions on this list, the crowd's adoration and love for him way outlasted what his body could give them. At one point he just had to take the title off him because he was too injured. He would have loved, I'm sure Bruno would have loved to be the world champion until the day he shuffled off this mortal coil, and I'm sure his spirit was willing, but at one point the injury stacked up. But he was the great before there was any standard for greatness in pro wrestling. He was the first superstar champion in his region. And that Northeast, when San Martino was out there, the New York crowds just came alive. And Tony and I have watched some of those old matches where San Martino's involved, and you've never heard a crowd get so raucous over a toe hold. Bruno just, I can't describe just how incredible it was watching how he could get these reactions off of pretty simple moves. Moves nowadays that most wrestlers wouldn't even consider because it doesn't have a flip involved. But again, most of these folks on the list, other than a handful of them, most of them never come off the top rope. You'll notice that. But Bruno, as the longest reigning and the most days as champion, and a record that will undoubtedly never be matched. I don't see it ever being even close. Bruno San Martino, and folks, that is number 4, the 4th greatest champion of all time. We raise our glass to the great Bruno San Martino. To you, sir. Now we move on to number 3. Who would be the champion number 3? It would be someone that you would have to go 1-on-1 with the great one, The Rock. Yes, The Rock is the 3rd greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champion of all time. So, one of the most amazingly charismatic people, one of the most, just has a natural ability to connect with the crowd. Also, the other strange thing is he's got this face where you can see his expression from the back row of the stadium. And so that works great for Hollywood. So he was able to transition his skills and leverage them in ways I've never seen any professional wrestler be able to do. He's gone from wrestler to the biggest star in the world. So his lessons in charisma that he picked up in wrestling apparently paid off. But yes, his time with the title, really when he was a heel, in my opinion, was some of his best work as champion. When he was a babyface, that was just, the crowd turned him babyface. He was a heel, but he could just talk such amazing shit that you would just be, who the fuck is this guy? And he would just grab your attention. And the crowd turned him face when he was a heel. Back in about 2001, go back and watch some of those promos where The Rock's still just being a smarmy prick, but the crowd just, ah! So that's a special talent. The Rock got himself over with his ability to talk. And also, I mean, the guy is fucking jacked. Like, even now, when he's slimmed down some, like, he would still, like, look like a goddamn mastodon next to most humans. So, next to most of us mere mortals. So, yes, The Rock, I know from your Hollywood estate, you're hearing that you're only the third greatest world heavyweight champion in all WWE World Heavyweight Championship history. On the KOE Nation, I know upon hearing this, he's going to be absolutely devastated. I'm probably going to be getting emails about this. I mean, considering, you know, me and The Rock, I mean, we're just best of pals. He calls me for advice all the time. You know, Phil, what do you think about this movie role? Should I take it? Well, I don't know, Rocky. What's, well, send me a copy of the contract. I'll get back to you and tell you what I think. I'll get right on that, Phil. I can always count on you. You know it, Rock. That's pretty much how that conversation goes. And so, that is why number 3 goes to Rocky Maivia, The Rock. Dwayne Johnson, you are the third greatest WWE champion in all history. We raise our glass to you. Now we move on to number 2, the second greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champion of all time. Give me an oh, hell yeah! Hell yeah! Stone Cold Steve Austin is the second greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champion of all time. Who else could be number 2? Who, like, honestly, Stone Cold, one of the true greats. He took the business through one of its true ascendant periods. The Attitude Era, I don't think any other personality could have possibly delivered the Attitude Era like Stone Cold. Like, without Steve Austin, I don't think you have an Attitude Era. It was kicked off with his WrestleMania 14 victory over Shawn Michaels. A lot of controversy surrounding that one. We didn't, like, folks were saying, is Shawn going to drop the title? Like, there's some alleged stories of Undertaker taping up his fists. Now, who knows? Like, we have no idea. But in the end, Shawn did the favor to Steve, and the Attitude Era was kicked off, and Steve Austin had one of the hottest runs in wrestling. Just in wrestling. You could, and his feud with Vince McMahon, you could say, he had a pretty, like, his feud with The Rock was great, but at least one of them, it was an extension of the real greatest feud of all time, and that was the feud of Steve Austin and Vince McMahon. Like, I don't think there will ever be a greater feud in all professional wrestling, because we all believed it. Well, God, Steve Austin, like, who doesn't get pissed off at their boss? And so, yes, we believed it. It was visceral, it was relatable, and it was a great time. And it's unfortunate that I don't know if there will ever be quite an era like the Attitude Era. And for that, thank you, Steve Austin, for delivering that amazing time. And you are the second greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champion of all time. Now, we move onward and we move upward. But wait, first a toast to one Steve Austin of the Stone Cold Persuasion. One of the greatest champions of all time. But now, we move on to number 1. The one who had to be the top. The one who had to be the peak. The one who could not be denied. The immortal Hulk Hogan. Yes. Who else? Who else? I defy you. Who drew more money? Who brought more mainstream attention to professional wrestling other than Hulk Hogan? the slam of Andre the Giant is now a piece of pop culture history forever. It will, like, there's no erasing that from the history books, no matter how much you want to. Hulk Hogan is, in America and in pretty much any place that has a television, is still considered the wrestler. So his contributions to the business, his creating it into a mainstream product that people could actually find, that is all credited to Hulk Hogan and his runs as the WWF champion. Every other champion in WWF history is measured by the very high bar set by the Hulkster himself. So that is why the #1 world heavyweight champion of all time, despite all his flaws, despite all his politicking, despite everything, despite the fact that, he didn't work such a hard match in the ring, despite everything you have to say, Hulk Hogan still reigns supreme as the greatest champion of all time. Folks, raise a glass of whatever you have to the immortal one, the greatest champion of all time, Hulk Hogan. To you, sir. Folks, as I'm known to say around here, all that being said, thank you for joining us for my top 10 picks of the greatest WWE World Heavyweight Champions of all time. Be sure to like, share, subscribe right here at the Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast. You can also find me at K.O.E Nation on YouTube and Twitch. And be sure to find all of us at the Crazy Cast under the Big Buckin' Empire at Big Buckin' Empire on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Folks, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. And I will catch you all on the flip side. Like, share, subscribe. Revolutionary Wrestling Podcast. Thanks, folks.